Thank you for joining us. My name is Ed Shikata. I'm the city manager here in Palo Alto. Really want to thank everyone for coming out to talk about San Francisquito Creek. Just a couple of housekeeping items. First off, we will, actually I was told, let folks know where the restrooms are, which are down the corridor to your right, if anyone needs to use the facilities. Also, we are hosting this meeting here in the city of Palo Alto. At the same time, we have our partners represented here with the San Francisquito Creek Joint Powers Authority. Margaret will be giving a presentation. We also have representatives here from Valley Water, from the city of Menlo Park, and the city of East Palo Alto. So really indicative of the partnership that has been necessary and critical for us to be able to address the issues of today as well as to plan for the future. So with that, I think we want this evening really to be an opportunity for you to get an update on what's happening with the plans for improvement of San Francisquito Creek, but also give you an opportunity to ask questions, give us feedback, and really take it from there. So this is really your meeting, and with that, I will turn it over to Margaret Bruce.
Thank you so much, Ed. I'm not familiar with all of the faces in the room, but I want to ask, is anyone here an elected official? If not, that's fine. You have your turn, it's okay. But I do want to make sure that if anybody is here from the elected officials, that we recognize and thank them for their service. So my name is Margaret Bruce. I'm the Executive Director at the San Francisquito Creek Joint Powers Authority. I get to work with and for all of these fabulous people that Ed introduced. Our job is to figure out the best way to provide flood protection. Wow, there's feedback. So if it comes to pass that the microphone is just an unsatisfactory thing, I can project. So how many of you are familiar with the completed Reach 1 project? Okay, I see a lot of hands, but for those of you who are perhaps new to the community or new to this particular project, most flood control work happens from the downstream upstream to make sure that we widen the channel and remove from flood risk from the bottom up. So the Reach 1 project goes from Highway 101 south downstream to the mouth of the creek at the bay. What that did was, that the metaphor I like to use is it turned a wine bottle into a mason jar. So the creek now has this very copious channel and high flood walls in a levee that keep the water in a high flood situation along with sea level rise between the banks. That also prevents water from pooling upstream because that area was so tightly constricted before. All right, here's a picture of the floodplain according to FEMA. That red area is the area that is now protected by the Reach 1 area, the Reach 1 project. The blue area represents what FEMA considers the area vulnerable to flood in the event of what's called a 1% flood, or a 1 in 100-year flood or storm. You'll notice it's kind of an odd shape. Water flows away from the creek because the creek exists at the high point of its alluvial fan. The alluvial fan is just this huge pile of sand and gravel that has accumulated over the centuries, over the millennia, as the creek has washed sand and gravel and silt down from the highly erosive materials in the Santa Cruz Mountains. That there is an alluvial fan is a testament to the fact that the whole area, basically from Redwood City to Mountain View, has been flooded many times in history of the creek. So that alluvial fan, that arcing shape of that mound of sediment, is the result of historic past flooding. Where the creek breaks out, those places where the blue touches the creek, are places where there are natural or man-made constrictions. And that's what our projects are dealing with. Come on. You can do it. There we go. All right, there are 4 components, and we're going to touch on each of these today. The Newell Bridge replacement, channel widening, top-of-bank, and Pope-Chaucer. Come on. There we go. So there are a number of, wait a second. Yeah, it seems to. Hello. There we go. So the project objectives. Our goals are to contain the flow of the maximum flow that the channel can withstand or convey under what was called the flood of record storm. So what we experienced in 1998, which was considered about a 70-year storm. What we thought at the time was that that was about the maximum that the channel could convey, and we could find a way to contain or detain enough water so that the neighbors of the creek in that blue area would be safe from a storm of that equivalency. We must also, legally and ethically, prevent any transference of risk downstream. So just because fixing something in one part of the creek may solve the problem for some people, if it creates a problem for other people, we can't do that. We have to find a way that we protect everyone equitably. And we have to design and build a project that the regulatory agencies will accept. We cannot extirpate the fish. Oh, next. Okay, so there are several key tasks coming up. Regulatory permits, city permits, including their reviews as well as the tree management parts of this, rights of way, and community outreach and engagement. This is one small part of the community outreach and engagement. Next. So the status of this is very, very important, and where we are is the draft permits have been submitted. Once upon a time, we were anticipating that this project would be permitted all in one sort of omnibus permit application. The regional board was really happy about that. And then some other stuff happened. The federal partner that we have for the channel widening work, the United States Army Corps of Engineers, wants to do their own permitting according to their own regulatory process. So we're pulling that piece out and fast-tracking it. Newell Bridge is also on a fast track, so we're pulling that piece out and fast-tracking that. Those pieces have been submitted in draft. They will be submitted in final in June for a turnaround by 3 months, so we should, by the end of September, have both of those sets of permits complete. Next. Because there are 3 different cities bordering the creek, each city is a little bit different in their processes and in how they would like to see the information about the project come to them for their consideration and review. It's important to the JPA and to our members to ensure their communities and their elected leaders see the information clearly and have a chance to weigh in and understand what's happening, when it's happening, and to have some feedback for us. So all of those reviews will be done by the end of this year. And rights of way. So how many folks here think that the channel is under one uniform ownership? Thank you for laughing. It's a patchwork. It's this medley of some parcels owned to the middle of the creek, to the other side of the creek, city ownership, valley water easement, county easement, city easement. It's a smattering of everything, and all of the shapes are different, and all of the access easements are very particular. So there we go. So we are working through the access rights for the surveying work that's necessary to plan the projects and design the projects. And then for the easements that are necessary to construct the projects where we don't already have flood maintenance easements through valley water. That is sometimes a delicate process, and it's one that needs to be conducted respectfully and methodically and according to some very particular and careful legal requirements. All right. Actually, could we go back just for a moment? Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure I covered that. Next one. All right. So this is where I would actually like very much to hear from all of you. How many of you heard about this event through the SFC JPA's newsletter? Oh, like 4 of you? 5 maybe? I'd love it if you'd sign up for my newsletter. Yeah, okay. So in addition to Palo Alto's and Menlo Park's and East Palo Alto City Communications, we put out about a quarterly newsletter and also send out informative updates about community events like this through our distribution. I'd love it if you'd sign up. You can go to our website. There's a tab that says Connect with Us. Please sign up for our email newsletter. The main newsletter only comes out quarterly. I'm not going to load up your inboxes. So we have newsletters, we make presentations. If any of you have community groups, Rotaries, Lions, Kiwanis, anything like that, I'd love to come and provide an update to your community group or your neighborhood group. So let us know if there's a chance to make a presentation. Check our web, yeah?
Many of us are here because of Preston Park neighborhood
Mm-hmm.
association, so we want to know like the system.
Yep.
Where it's already active.
Tom is my conduit. Yeah, Tom's my pipeline. Yay, Tom. Yep, thank you for that. So I also want to start instituting office hours at my office, so if anybody wants to just drop by and have a chat, or, and I think that may be increasingly important as we get closer to and into construction, so if anybody wants to have a chat about how things are going, what they've noticed, what they're concerned about. Next one. So I know this is a really big issue that's on everybody's mind. Stuff happened at the New Year's Eve storm. It was a big deal. It was the second highest flow in recorded history. 98 was bigger, but not by much. So what we saw was that the creek broke out of its banks in places that our hydraulic models didn't predict. We had more scour and channel erosion than we thought we would see for that kind of a flow. That tells us that what we need to know about the channel and its dynamics was, we say, under-informed before. We have so much more instrumentation in the upper watershed and in the channel, monitoring what happened in this event than we ever had before. So it wasn't that what we knew was wrong, it was just incomplete. So now we are, and I'm saying we in a very generous sense, because it isn't me, it's my brilliant colleagues at the Santa Clara Valley Water District who are using this information to validate and inform the hydrological models, to understand why the creek behaved the way it did, and what we need to know as we look at our project designs. So we are doing preliminary surveys of the bank, the creek banks. When the creek dries out in the summertime, we will do surveys of the channel. We can't do that until it's free of water so we can get down in the channel safely and get accurate surveys. What we know now about the hydrological models, again, is being evaluated. We will have a technical memo from our colleagues at Valley Water in a few weeks. When we get that technical memo, we will know a lot more about why the creek behaved as it did and what we need to do, if anything, to change our project designs to accommodate that new information. Next. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to Holly, who's going to tell us about Palo Alto's Newell Bridge.
Good evening. My name is Holly Boyd. I am the Assistant Director of Public Works for the City of Palo Alto. and I'm going to provide updates on the Newell Bridge status, schedule, and funding. So as maybe a lot of you know, this project is primarily funded by the Highway Bridge Program, which is managed by Caltrans. So basically, in summary, that means everything that happens with this project needs to be coordinated with Caltrans. The Highway Bridge Program has paid about 89% of the project expenses to date, with the matching 11% coming from our partners at Valley Water. So there are 4 main items that staff, along with the consultant, are working on now that all need to be completed before the project can go out to bid and into construction. So the first one is completing the design. So we received the 95% plans in mid-March, and which staff has been reviewing with our partner agencies.
Go back.
That's okay, I'll just keep going. So these documents will be used to help us complete the other items, including the right-of-way acquisition process, as well as updating our funding requests with Caltrans. So the second item is the right-of-way acquisition process. Public Works is working with Caltrans to approve additional funding for this acquisition approvals for temporary construction easements needed during construction. While we're waiting for Caltrans approval, we've already authorized the consultant to begin the process to keep it moving, and appraisal notices will be sent out to the neighboring property owners by the end of this month. So we're expecting the right-of-way process to be completed by this fall. As part of the right-of-way certification, we're also working with our utility providers whose services are located within the project area, including PG&E, so they can relocate power poles or plan to raise or adjust any of their services. The third item is permitting, which Margaret has touched on. So staff from Palo Alto and the SFJC JPA staff has already been coordinating on our permitting. We are submitting a revised application for Newell to expedite the permit, so which we expect to receive in September. So the last element is funding. So as I mentioned earlier, funding for this project is coordinated by Caltrans through their Highway Bridge Program. The funding sources includes the Highway Bridge Program grant, which is the largest source, the local match from Valley Water, and then the $2 million from the state budget that Senator Becker secured from us last summer. So the recently updated project construction cost estimate is $15 million. We're working with Caltrans now to increase the funding request for the Highway Bridge Program portion based on this new estimate, and we're also requesting that funding be moved from fiscal year 2026, where it's currently programmed, to fiscal year 2024, so it will align with our construction plan. So with those 4 items in motion, staff anticipates to be completed this fall with these 4 separate parallel processes, allowing the project to go out to bid and then construction contract awarded in early 2024, with construction starting in spring of 2024. And then I will turn it back over to Margaret.
So we're excited about this progress. This is the first really important component of the project. We're working from downstream to upstream. The Newell Bridge is the key part that has to happen first. Next slide. So the most important project component in terms of protecting from flooding by far is the channel widening. This is what will provide way more capacity in the channel to protect downstream and upstream residents from flooding. We are working closely with the Army Corps of Engineers, and we are working simultaneously with our colleagues at Valley Water, who are working both in parallel on their design process, utilizing each other's expertise. The status of this is it's being funded through what's called a Continuing Authorities Program through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. This is an opportunity for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to decide locally, doesn't have to go to Congress, but as the local division, decide to fund local projects up to $10 million. What this will do for us is we provide some of the match. I think we provide 25 to 50%, I can't remember, sorry. But we provide some match, they provide 10 million. They provide the permitting, they provide the NEPA review, which is the National Environmental Protection Act review. Right now, the status is they are doing what's called their feasibility study. They've done their preliminary design. They've done their preliminary environmental review. They've done their preliminary economic analyses that say, looks like it should pencil out pretty good. When they do this feasibility study that bundles all of those elements together, they will be able to say, thumbs up, we think this is a good investment for the United States and it should go forward. There is, we believe, every likelihood that it's going to pencil out very favorably. There is some small chance it won't. Thus the parallel process of designing this and planning this in conjunction with our partners at Valley Water, just in case. So the status is, in 9 months, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers should be complete with all of their environmental, technical, design, feasibility, and all of their studies, and their feasibility study will be complete. When that's complete, they can start the design and implementation process. Channel widening is scheduled to be constructed in 2025. It may take 2 seasons to complete, so it may be a 2025 summer and a 2026 summer, but the plan right now is 2025. The anticipated completion again is 2025. It may stretch out for another season. Next. Top-of-Bank features are being planned collaboratively with the JPA, with Valley Water's engineering support. And the status of this is we are conducting a supplementary EIR. The funding is going to be a combination of local funding, grant funding, and the Safe Clean Water funding from Valley Water. The schedule is the same as channel widening. So construction, 2025, might stretch out into 2026, but that's the plan right now, is 2025. Anticipated completion, the same. Hopefully 1 construction season, possibly 2. Some of this depends on the weather, which we can't control. Next. And the Pope-Chaucer Bridge has to come last. This is the piece that is dependent upon all of the others. So depending on the schedule of all of the other work lining up and the funding for it all lining up, this is the capstone. The status is that together with channel widening, Top-of-Bank, and Pope-Chaucer, the designs will be at 100% status by this fall, by October. Funding is going to be a combination of local funding, state funding, through at least 2 different sources, as well as funds from the Santa Clara Valley Water District Safe Clean Water Funds. Anticipated completion, 2026, 2027, contingent upon all of those other planets aligning, making sure that we get all of those other pieces completed. So next one. The bottom line is the gap in funding at the moment, 17 million. We have estimated funding, identified funding, over 40 million. So we have about 70% of what we need already in hand. I'm going to caveat this very strongly. Over the past few years, we have seen, on account of the pandemic, supply chain issues, inflation, construction competition, costs escalating. We are also not at 100% design yet. We also don't know what the post-storm analysis is going to show us about how or even if we need to modify our project designs. All of those uncertainties add to this is a guess. I am confident, however, that there is funding available. The partners, the 5 member agencies, contribute to local funding. There is a strong commitment to ensuring that this is completed. So as we get closer, the gap will narrow, the uncertainty will narrow, and we will be reaching our goal. Next slide. So another thing, some grant funding is in the pipeline and some is yet to be secured. We are working with our state partners to identify more state funding, and some of those grants are easier than others to get and to manage. So we are trying to find the ones that are the best fit. Next. This wraps us up. Please stay abreast of what's happening with the projects. I know it seems like it moves at a glacial pace. There are so many pieces at play. The survey work, the rights of way, the engineering, the environmental, archaeological, the local planning, the regulatory agency permits that come back and change the engineering and the rights of way and the environmental, and it's an iterative process. It's maddeningly slow, but it is moving. So with that, keep in touch with us, sign up for newsletters, send your cards and letters. We'd love to hear from you. Time for questions. Actually, Brad is going to be our roving microphone dude. And please stand up and introduce yourself and let us know where you're from and your question or comment.
Thank you. I'm Sue Dinwiddie. I live on Jackson Drive and been in the neighborhood since 1963. Yeah, I have two questions. One is, are we past all the lawsuits from the individual property owners, which have held things up, as I understand it? And the second is, do we know the design yet of the Newell Street Bridge?
I will let my colleagues speak to the design of the Newell Street Bridge. To the best of my knowledge, at this moment, knock wood, we are past the lawsuits.
Oh, that's all.
Yes, that delayed us,
Yeah.
that cost us. We are past that. I cannot guarantee you in a litigious society that we won't see that again. We will do our best to avoid it.
Thank you.
So yes, the design for Newell has already been mostly completed. It was approved by our architectural review board back in 2019, I believe, with our environmental impact report approved in 2020. And we're almost to the end of design. We actually have 100% design. I call them 95 because I don't say they're 100 until they go out to bid. But yeah, it's nearly done.
Is that a two-lane with pedestrian?
Yes, it's a one lane each direction for vehicle traffic with pedestrian sidewalks on the side. And well, I think it's actually Sharrows. Yeah, with Sharrows, it's actually a wider lane with Sharrows for veterans.
Maybe I'm Rich Gerald from Dana Avenue, so thank you. We moved here in '97. Before this whole area was in the FEMA, at least the most recent FEMA flood zone. And we learned 6 months later that all of a sudden we were in a FEMA flood zone, which I thought was specious at the time, but then we had the flood literally 6 months after that, so it turned out to be real, right? Okay, my question is this: assuming all this gets done, including Pope-Chaucer Bridge, how long will it take FEMA to rezone the area so that it's no longer in the flood zone, which is causing a lot of construction requirements that would not otherwise exist for people who move into this area?
Excellent question. And not only is it
Excellent question, and not only is it an issue of extra construction requirements and costs, it's also extra insurance costs on many people who are finding that a difficult cost to bear. It is a lengthy process to get out of a flood zone. And this is not going to be a popular statement, and I'm going to stand up here and say, bring the right fruit. We are faced with climate change. We are seeing increased variability in precipitation. As we design this project, we will do the best we can with what we have to protect the community to the best of our ability, and the goalposts are moving. When FEMA says oh great, maybe we can reassign this to not be in a flood zone anymore. I don't think they can, and I don't think anybody can say that that's a permanent thing, even if it were possible. So I don't have an answer. My magic 8-ball says reply Higgsy, ask again later, and it's going to be a long time.
Ask a follow-up question.
Let me give you my other.
Um,
Hang on, so people online can hear.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We've gone through 2 of these. The first time I felt like a victim of the floods. This most recent time I felt like we were a resource to our other neighbors who were first-timers in this. We're at a stage where we're thinking, like, how long do we stay in Palo Alto and all that kind of stuff. So are you saying that the FEMA reclassification could take a decade or something? Okay, so because that matters a lot to
Yes.
those of us who may or may not be, staying here.
Yeah.
But I think this last flood probably cut $1 million off of all the houses on Dana, and
That's huge.
who are we connecting with at FEMA?
So it is very, very early to connect with FEMA about this. We would need to remove that blue area on that map. We would need to engineeringly, if you want, that's the word, abandon the English language. We would have to prove that all of the properties in that area are now below a 1 chance in 100 years of flooding. We can't do that with what we can do along the creek or in the creek.
Even after everything is done.
Even after everything is done, we can do what we can to protect from the flood of record or something like that. We would need to have a suite of actions that include upstream detention, if that capacity exists. Now add in the complexities of Stanford University's Searsville project, which is an important project, but it adds a layer of complexity.
What's that project?
No. So just for the benefit of the group, how many folks are familiar with Stanford University's Searsville Reservoir and Dam? About half of the folks here. In the upper watershed on Matadero Creek, there is a dam that was built over 100 years ago by Stanford University to detain water for their irrigation purposes. It had originally intended to be for drinking water, didn't turn out to be very good quality. They use it for irrigation. That creek is highly erosive, and the reservoir has silted in. Stanford has a legal case against them for blocking fish passage for endangered steelhead. Their proposed solution has recently been published in their what's called a notice of preparation. They're beginning their CEQA work, their environmental work. Their proposal is to cut a hole, a window, in the dam that will allow fish passage and still provide some high flow detention, kind of like having a faucet that fills the bathtub too fast for the drain to let it go out. So when we get a big flow, it stops some of the water, holds the peak back, the water can then drain out slowly. The JPA thinks this is a good idea and is in support and has many concerns and is actively participating with Stanford in their CEQA process. We need each other's projects to succeed, so we are very closely engaged with them.
Hi, so I moved here in 1996, right across the street. Been through this whole thing in 1998. I would have sold my property. Unfortunately, was stuck with capital gains and all that stuff, so kind of stuck where we are. My view of all of this is I've been dealing with government regulation as a lawyer for 35 years. It just stinks. I mean, I can't say anything nice about the city of Palo Alto.
I mean, I just hang my head. If I were working for the city of Palo Alto, I'd want to wear a burqa. I don't want anybody to see my face because I'm so ashamed. You guys want to do fiber to my home? You can't control your flow. I want fiber from you. I want you to get the, look at the creek water. It's nasty. Okay, so I don't understand why Stanford and County of Santa Clara are off the hook here. Stanford is under the jurisdiction of the County of Santa Clara. County of Santa Clara just paid all of its employees heroes pay, $2,500 each in bonuses for just, for remote work during the pandemic, etc. They need to shut down their restaurants to get out of business. So I have my own opinion about the County of Santa Clara. So let's talk about Stanford, because I played on that golf course. The creek goes right through the golf course. And if Stanford doesn't give a shit about flooding downstream. They really don't. They're a private property owner. They've got their own access to ground. They're doing their own damn thing. I went to law school right there. They're doing what they're doing. It's not a farm. The reason it's called a farm has to do with the equestrian passions of Leyland Stanford and so forth. There's no farming going on. You track this creek upstream. What's there? It's the golf course. There's 2 par 3s in a row. There's no farming going on there. If there was farming going on, that would detain the water. That would cleanse the water. It's filthy. It's full of silt. Where's the silt coming from? There's Stanford filth in the nooks and crannies of my garage right now. So Stanford's got to do a lot more work than just Sears. If they were farming those hills on 280 are bare, they should farm that stuff, slow down the water. City of Palo Alto says you can't plant sequoias. What the hell's wrong with the city of Palo Alto? Plant as many trees as you possibly can. Yeah, I know, but you need to give me my chance to speak as well. Yeah, thank you. So I will wrap it up pretty quickly, but this is pretty serious stuff. Okay, there's governmental incompetence of the yin-yang. Stanford is getting away with this stuff. You could easily flood a few of those 3-4 holes. They can play without golf for 2 or 3 months, and they'll get a fresh layer of healthy silt. I'm president of the Santa Clara Farm Bureau right now. I've been farming in this county for 23 years. I have to know what I'm talking about. So there's a lot of inaction going on here, a lot. Non-stop delay, and the public interest is being put aside. So you know what, you have private interest, deal with it. Take it. The government is allowed to take private property. It's perfectly lawful. Write them a check. Fair market value for the taking that you do. What's unacceptable is what you guys have done here, which is you basically completely neglected the public interest, which has a huge interest in dealing with, government. You guys really don't have a serious interest in doing. The city manager, the whole lot of you, Valley Water, Anderson Dams, every project, nothing is getting done in this country. Nothing. Even Gavin can't build his train set. So we got some serious water problems. I have no confidence in Valley Water, no confidence in the County of Santa Clara, and we need to get some. If you need to take legal action against Stanford, you should. But something needs to happen here. This is very, very frustrating and just reeks of incompetence.
Okay, I think we had another question here.
Thank you. I do have a couple questions. But first, I wanted to thank the JPA and the City of Palo Alto and Valley Water for doing a focus to try and get these projects over the finish line. They really showed today, so I want to thank you for that. My first question is, this is really the first time I've heard the Top-of-Bank project, and it sounds cool, but is the Chaucer Bridge really contingent on that project? Or if you did the widening, could you do the bridge while you waited to figure out the funding for the Top-of-Bank? Because the Top-of-Bank is where basically all your financial shortfall is, because Caltrans is going to pick up that $6.5 million for the Newell Bridge.
At the moment, that's where our funding shortfall is. Frankly, I'm not very worried about funding that, because if we were to not do Top-of-Bank and open up Pope-Chaucer, Pope-Chaucer is acting like a nozzle, right? So it's like your thumb on a hose. If you take your thumb off the hose, it's going to send lots of water down the channel that the old structures lining the Top-of-Bank, the flood walls, the gravity wall along Woodland Avenue, and the stacked saccrete along behind the homes on Edgewood are old and friable or old and potentially undermineable. We send all that water down, we are not convinced that those structures can hold. If they fall into the creek, or if they fail during a high flood event, we end up with just chaos that I just don't even want to go there. So we need to be really careful about A, the design, B, the timing, and let me worry about the funding. I'm not shy about asking for money.
And then my second question was, I know this fall, the Newell Bridge is getting held up a little bit by some of the property owners and the right-of-way and stuff. Have you gotten beyond that, or what's the status on that specifically?
So yes, we have cleared up our lawsuit with the property owner for Newell Road Bridge. The other property owners that I mentioned while I was giving an update are owners that we need to deal with just for easement purposes, and that's just part of the process of getting ready to get the obtain construction easements. So, and I believe there's about 9 properties.
Hello, this is Kevin Fisher, Allister Avenue. I was actually in this room 25 years ago after the 98 flood. So I saw up there a $6.5 million funding gap for the Newell Road Bridge. So that is flashing red in my mind. What's the answer for that? What's the solution?
Okay, so the recent updated design plans that we just got in March also came with a cost estimate. So the cost estimate that was used to get the $15 million was for a grant application last year. So we're refining the cost estimate with Caltrans help, and that's what we've been doing the last couple of weeks. There is a shortfall. I don't believe it's $6 million. I believe it's a little less. And we're working with Caltrans and are pretty confident that they're going to support this as part of their Highway Bridge Program project. It's just we're finalizing the paperwork to get into Caltrans so they can go through the approval process and get that extra money funded.
So what's your confidence in the schedule?
I'm as confident as I can be given all the moving parts, right? There's the funding, the permitting, the right-of-way. What's the last one I'm missing? Oh, the design. The design was the one I talked about. The design is done. So yeah.
25 years. I was here 25 years ago. 25.
Yes, I do realize it's been decades.
Quarter century.
But
My lifetime.
this process was, has been a long process just in the design with the Reach 1 project happening, completed. Newell's been going on for 20 years. Took a big break in the 2010s areas where not much work happened, but since we started work on it again in 2019, we've made significant progress, and I do believe we're going to get it through the finish line.
My name is Elizabeth Jackson, and I'm from East Palo Alto, and I too was here 25 years ago, 1998. And some of the same things happen on the East Palo Alto side. There's one part of the building, the garage just overflowed. All the cars got damaged. It's the same thing that happened. And I want to know, can you do some of this simultaneously, not one at a time, like you did the area by the post office, and it worked. But I think you got to do some more, because I took pictures and that water was at the top. I'm not kidding. If it has something, I can show you my picture. If it gets worse than that, it's going to go over on the gardens area and get flooded out like it did the last time. So I just think maybe you should maybe get the federal government to say FEMA, get them to help give you more funding to do some of those projects more than one at a time. Not one at a time, right. But maybe 2 or 3 at a time. Because that was 25 years ago. Now we're back at it again.
Yeah.
So how long is it going to take? Another 25 years?
Not another 25 years. And to your point about, can we do this together? Can we do this in parallel, not in series? We're trying to stack together as many of the project components that can be done simultaneously as we possibly can. Some of them have to go in order from so that we don't actually transfer risk to other places, very specifically to East Palo Alto because it is the lower bank. So, but you offered a great thing, and I would like to take you up on it, and anybody else who has photographs or video. If you wouldn't mind sending them to me, I'm easy to track down. I would love to see your photographs and video. And if you wouldn't mind penning an email or a story about your experiences, I would like to keep an historical record of the event. We have very little from the 1998 storm. I would like to have a chronicle and your stories of this. So we, as in the JPA, because it hadn't been formed then, but I have stories about bailing out my grandmother's basement. Other questions? I saw other hands.
Hi, I'm Tom Rindfleisch, and I wanted to respond to this gentleman who was talking about the Stanford-Searsville project. I spent 5 years on Stanford's outside committee to advise on the Searsville project. On their dime, they hired a world-class civil engineering firm to study upstream and downstream. There was a total commitment to understanding the downstream consequences of the Searsville project. And basically what I would like to do is encourage everybody to stay involved with these projects. I was in the 1998 flood. I have spent since about the year 2000 working on how to fix a creek with Stephen Monosmith, a colleague at Stanford Civil Engineering Department. And this has been a very complicated education, engineering design, and administrative management of this project. A number of us have been over to see the Regional Water Quality Board in order to get Reach 1 done. And we had to go to the board and as a group stand up and say, stop obstructing this project. And we had to engage them in a meeting at Stanford that brought the director of that agency out to put him on the spot and say, why are you obstructing this? And this has gone on and on and on. We have had at least a half a dozen of our citizens standing in the way of getting this project going forward. It's not just the gentleman on Edgewood. There have been a whole set of other people who have been involved in this. And in the case of Stanford's Searsville project, I would encourage you to look up in Google Searsville Watershed Restoration Project. It has all been managed with Stanford money. It has been managed with their guidance, and they are facing a major obstruction to getting that project going. There are people who simply do not want to configure the dam so that it supports downstream flood management. They want to get rid of the dam, which means that every drop of water coming down the creek up there is going to come into San Francisquito Creek and make things worse. And so engaging the public in this on a regular basis is absolutely essential to keep these projects going forward. And I have to say, I don't like people getting flooded, but it takes events like New Year's Eve in 1998 to get people off the dime to actually exercise their pressure to get the government agencies, all of them, federal, local, state, and so on, to work together to get this done. So that's my plea. I really liked this meeting. I'm glad that you held it. I think we need more of these to keep people apprised of what's going on and to document what is being done to get this project done. I want this done as much as anybody around here, because every winter I end up fielding email messages all from Crescent Park Neighborhood Association, people who can't sleep at night and want to know what's going on. Do I need to sandbag? Do I need to get out of town? What's going on? And so that's my plea, Please stay involved.
I live on Edgewood Drive, and it looks to me like this red line on Site 3 is the back of my property. Well, what is it that you have in mind doing there? Are you going to take away some acreage there, or what?
The plan for site widening 3 and 4, which are very close to each other, there is, on the Palo Alto side of the bank, a diagonal like this. The top of the bank here, the toe of the bank there. To widen the channel, we cut it back to almost vertical. So we widen the channel from the bottom. The face of the channel that is now stacked sack concrete at a diagonal will be some kind of a shear face, whether that is a shear pin wall or some other kind of shear face, either secured deeply into the ground or deeply into the bank to withstand both pressure this way and pressure this way to secure that bank. Nothing from the top of the bank will change, except that when that is cut back like this, there may be tree roots in that area, trees that have grown up inside the valley water easement, maintenance easement right-of-way, or trees that may have been planted by property owners at the top of the bank may be impacted. We will have an arborist on site to make sure that we understand how that work may impact the trees. There is no acreage being taken from the top. Again, the slope is being changed from the toe inward to make it vertical so that there's more capacity in the channel itself. We good? Okay.
Hi, my name is Bill Stewart. I live on Walter Hayes. I'm in the flood zone. I don't quite understand why it is that you folks can't get a hydrological study done to where you can determine the 100-year flood capacity needed in order to accommodate getting rid of flood insurance for the folks that are currently in the flood zone. And, you know, the Army Corps engineer does this all over the country. The Valley Water District is tasked with doing this in Santa Clara Valley. And I know they've done it on the Guadalupe River, they've done it on Coyote Creek, they've done it on numerous waterways. Why the hell can't they get it done on San Francisquito Creek? Why is it so difficult?
Okay, really, really good question. When we look at what's necessary to convey the size of a 100-year flood, we would need to do that kind of channel widening that I described before, much more extensively. And we would need to raise the bridges, all of them, and we would have to have very high flood walls in concrete on both sides for the length of the channel. When the JPA went through their CEQA, their California Environmental Quality Act process, when the community reviewed what were the options, that option of 100-year design, which had those project elements to make sure that, okay, all along the channel we could protect to a 100-year flood, was soundly rejected. So is it technically possible? Yes, of course it's technically possible. We may not be able to get it past the community that loves their trees, loves their fish, loves the riparian corridor that this natural channel affords the communities of Palo Alto, East Palo Alto, and Menlo Park. And we may not be able to pass muster with the regulatory agencies who say, we stand for the fish, and we're here for water quality, and we're here for ecosystem services that, you know, benefit us all collectively more broadly. So technically, yes, it's possible. It was not picked as the desirable choice. So
we're going to maintain our flood insurance in perpetuity, is what you're saying?
that is a possibility. I can't say no, but you know, that is a possibility. And thank you. It is one step at a time. And I would say that what we are looking at for our project designs, we are trying to set up so that they are not precluding other future potential actions. So if in the future, some future group decides, no, we really do want those really high flood walls, we can do that. For right now, that's not what the community made it loud and clear. They did not want those really high flood walls. Yes, sir.
Right. Thank you, and I'd also like to echo the thanks to all of you for coming out. I'm sure you've got other things you prefer to be doing. For me, and I've lived through this, my name is Dick Held, I live on DeSoto Drive. I've been through this 2 times. You folks, and I'm grateful for your service, but you have zero credibility with me. It has been 25 years, and you're still talking about process and all of the things that you need to get clearance on that you could have done at any time in the past 25 years, and you haven't. That is a fact. We've invested something on the order of, by my estimate, $25 million in the JPA, and we still have the problem that we had 25 years ago, and you've done nothing about it. You have made progress, and I'm grateful for the progress. But your credibility is zero. You have not produced. 25 years is more than enough time. In your handout, you talk about you can't work, you can only work when the channel is dry because of the fish. Palo Alto Online reported on February 15th that the governor, because of water being directed out into the ocean, he asked that the rules be waived on protecting salmon and other fish. There's an option there. If there was a sense of urgency, I trust that you'd explore that. Similarly, the bridge by El Palo Alto, when there was some failing there, the Caltrain asked that an emergency order be issued so it could circumvent all the procedural things. You continue to talk about procedure, getting approval, getting funding, educating legislators. It's been 25 years. Why should we trust now that you're going to do what you're saying you're going to do? I appreciate the fact that you're doing it, but why should we trust that it's going to be done this time? Thank you.
All I can say is, watch us. We'll get it done.
My name is Bob Winslow. I live on Dana Avenue, and I wanted to maybe pivot just a little slightly. I was really disappointed during the flooding with the communication that was coming forward. And I was particularly annoyed at the JPA website that was showing green lights that everything's fine. Given Mr. Stewart's lifting up that we're going to be living always with flood hazard, I would really hope that you could have an element of your program that works with living in a flood zone, coordinates the communication, directs those who need to have sandbags to have them, and basically focuses on that a little bit as you're doing the project. But I, as you say, with climate change, this is going to be a perpetual risk. So could you have a portion of your project that focuses on that component that we're always going to be operating? Thank you.
Thank you for that. I am really interested in your feedback about that. We had a failure on our website. We had a linked Google map. So I'm the webmaster, ED, communications director, chief cook and bottle washer.
You know what? This site is that. My only point is take your site down. That's not your business.
Yeah, it's down.
It was kind of amateurish.
Yes, agreed. But the point you make about you need real-time information that's useful to you in the moment with as much advance notice as possible so that you can take appropriate action. What I want to make sure we do is listen to you collectively as the JPA members, coordinate that information in a way that you aren't relying on a group of 4 people. That's all the staff I have is me and 3 others. So we need to coordinate so you have the information you need in the way you need it, when you need it.
Yeah, and I want to thank you so much for all the work you've been doing. I really am very impressed with this, and I've been living here in Palo Alto my whole life, and I know how hard this is as a government to try to get all these pieces done, so thank you. And I also want to say I am often very disappointed by the public and how few people show up for city council meetings and how few people actually participate in government and other types of public events. So I think part of why people are angry is that a lot of people have stayed at home and done their own thing and have not thought about the creek very often. Another thing is I really want to see the steelhead trout return to San Francisquito Creek. So my question is a little bit, how can you explain, is the dam removal at Searsville, that is necessary for the steelhead trout to return to San Francisquito Creek? And what is the status of the steelhead trout?
There are steelhead trout that migrate through the channel. Right now is ideal steelhead migratory time. There's enough flow for the fish to go up and spawn, and there's enough flow for the young smolt to come down and go out to the bay. In the summertime, the channel dries up in the alluvial fan part, so basically from the golf course or so to where it's tidally influenced, it becomes a dry river channel. The young steelhead thrive, grow, eat bugs up in the upper watershed, and then in the winter, they have that migratory channel open again. It will be enhanced by miles of spawning and rearing habitat when the Searsville Dam has that opening. The issue is going to be how the project that Stanford is proposing manages all of the accumulated silt that is now behind the dam that's going to need to go somewhere. It influences the quality of the water, it deposits in places in the creek we don't want it to, and yet it's also necessary to nourish our marshes to protect us from sea level rise. It's a complex problem. Going on? Yes.
Hi, Omar, live over on Alistair, just across from the school. We were here I was in Palo Alto in '98, got flooded, and so we got flooded again. My question is similar to the gentleman over here. Based on the timetable, it looks like it's maybe 5 years best that we think our homes are not at risk. So for the next 5 years, I'm not going to bet that it's a 1 in 100 or 1 in 70 year thing, right? With climate change, as you said, I'm pretty much nervous every time it rains and every season between now and 5 years. So maybe it's more to the city manager. Is there other stuff that can be done during the next 5 years to protect this part of the city? Like, I was pretty disappointed by some of the city's reaction during this flood, where it sounded like they were gathering information, like where's the flood? It's like, it's the same homes that got flooded. It's not a surprise where we all got flooded. DeSoto, maybe not as much, but Dana, Alistair, all along. Is there anything the city is planning to do to be better during the next 5 years, optimistically?
Well, certainly, and I think I shortened that 5 years a little bit as it relates to the Newell Road Bridge. And so again, hopefully within the next year or so, we'll have that under construction. But to your point,
flood threat to our homes.
Understand. It takes all of the above. But again, it's incremental change, incremental improvement along the way. I would go back to the comment on communication, that is an area that we will need to focus, certainly every year. We could have done better this year for sure. And both in terms of communication, our really awareness of the risk that was coming. Again, hopefully no surprise to anyone, the National Weather Service did not give us much warning, and so we were surprised by the magnitude of the flooding. That said, moving to communication after the fact, being better prepared to get the word out when there is imminent flood risk, as well as was noted, the sandbagging. I think that's another area that we will need to be better prepared, better mobilized, and supporting the needs to protect private property along the way.
Can you do something like, when you see it coming, like have some people get a bunch of sandbags and go drop them off, and we're all going to the sandbag things, trying to bag ourselves. Beyond communication, can you have pumps that come out? Can you have people that are more proactive? Because otherwise, we're all kind of on our own, like, trying to like move cars, sandbag ourselves.
Well,
New neighbors don't even know how to sand. We were like, I saw the sandbagging, and I was like, you don't have a plastic sheet, that water's going to come right in, you know. And it was just too late. So, but it wasn't a surprise, or it didn't happen. You could see the water coming. And can your city be ready? Can the city be ready to help out the residents in a very small set of, it's a pretty small part of Palo Alto thing. I was flooded down in Midtown in '98 and lost a car, and it was but maybe that's not, you don't take care of all of Palo Alto, but in that blue flood zone, can you be more proactive? Not just communicate, really.
Yeah, I think certainly there are techniques associated with sandbagging, to your point, that can be better disseminated. I do have to tell you, when it comes down to the event itself, we cannot be at every home. And so it does require participation by homeowners, by neighbors. It will take all of us. This is not something that the city alone will be able to take care of for you. I can say that unequivocally. And I'm sorry, I wish I could say it otherwise, but we will be focused on life, safety at that time, and really trying to ensure access out of the areas for those who are trying to get out, and ensure we can have emergency access for those who need it.
I've got a lot of questions. I can keep going.
Can I ask one?
If someone else has questions, raise your hand.
Omar, I would love to also, if I might, chime in on your point. I live in the Santa Cruz Mountains, which I tend to call the fun house of natural disasters. We have neighborhood CERT teams. We have, in my neighborhood, started a fire safe council group because, again, we're just like beset, it's like the biblical plagues. What I would suggest is that people who live in the flood area treat their lives like you do thinking about earthquakes. We all strap our water heaters down and we know what to do in the event of an earthquake. Some of the most effective things I've seen in my community are having neighborhood groups like CERT teams. Not everybody needs to participate, but there's a core group of people who are first aid trained, communicate with each other, have a neighborhood phone tree, have a pre-season meeting to say, okay, if the poop hits the whirling device, who's going to do what, and how do we handle it? How do we help each other? It has been remarkably helpful. We've lived through fires, floods, windstorms, snowstorms, and I've just seen it work really, really well. So for the folks who have been so impacted, you might think about something like that.
I have a question. I live on Dana. We were here in '98. We got flooded then too. Does the city now have a plan to have equipment on the Pope-Chaucer Bridge, unclog it? Like, can they be preemptive about that? I mean, we had neighbors that were there right before it jumped the banks, and there's like a pile of logs stretched way upstream because they couldn't get through. You know, eventually I know there was some equipment put on there, but there should be a proactive plan. The water starts rising, get some equipment there and try to unclog that, because that's a huge part of, I think, why it jumps the banks. It's like a narrow opening.
Point well taken. In fact, so we did have equipment. In fact, Mr. Eggleston had his staff there both renting that cherry picker, or whatever we call that, excavator to pull the logs out at Chaucer. As you may have noticed though, on New Year's Eve, it was jumping the banks upstream of Chaucer as well. So it's, again, to Margaret's earlier point, there are some things that we learned from that event, but your point nonetheless is well taken, that having equipment pre-positioned is important. A few years ago, we had similar equipment. It was Caltrans down at West Bayshore, because that was the choke point as a part of the reconstruction of the bridge that was happening there. So it is a bit dynamic, but certainly I take your point that we can and should be prepared for it.
So I have two very specific questions. One, why not, what's wrong with flooding the Stanford Golf Course? Number two, on this New Year's Eve, Alistair got flooded through the storm drain system, and the city did not close the damn street. And we had Rambo types in their pickup trucks. So we were flooded 2 inches in our garage. Okay, the kitchen and the house is 1 inch. We had 1 inch of safety. Some Rambo guy came, because Palo Alto had not shut the street down. This dude comes in his pickup truck, sends another wave. So you drive through that stuff. That goes up for, you put another inch of water, and for us, every inch, because we personally had to get on our hands and knees and clean this stuff. Third, I don't even understand this fish stuff, because God bless the fish, but that water is so nasty. I sent you guys to the city of Palo Alto pictures of my fiance's leg, because she, we didn't have all the right gear, and we got, my neighbor warned us about it, there'd just be poison. It's something really nasty. I mean, the stuff in that creek and the people living there, there's really nasty stuff in there, and Stanford needs to clean up its act.
See, it's 7:43.
Maybe last question here?
One more question?
You passed the mic last time.
Right.
Oh,
no, I wanted to just say something real quick as your great hi. I'm Rebecca Eisenberg. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm dealing with a family thing. I'm your elected representative on the Santa Clara Valley Water District. I also serve as a director on the San Francisco Creek JPA. I have my cards to hand out to anyone who's interested, so you can reach me directly. I always respond to all emails, even when they're negative or even mean. So, because people are very, no, I don't. If I don't respond to your email, it might be because I didn't get it. So, I don't receive emails sent to board@valleywater.org. This is like something I'm fighting with them about to get those emails. It's a problem, but I apologize if I didn't respond to your email. Please resend it to me, directly to me, and I will respond, I promise. I'm very sorry I didn't before. I don't deny that. And I'm sure otherwise maybe emails fell through the cracks, and I apologize for that. I will try harder, I will work harder. I'm not making excuses. But I just wanted to say briefly that because I wanted to address the 100-year flood issue, because there are different perspectives on that. First of all, and as you know, I was elected by residents and by environmentalists, and that's a very overlapping group here. And I care very, very much about flooding, not only because I care about residents, but also because as an environmentalist, flooding actually is a big environmental problem. I care about you all, but I also care about the environment, and flooding is terrible for the environment. It's awful, it's catastrophic, in addition to people losing everything and losing their homes. So, but even without that, the catastrophic environmental problem, I care about flooding a lot. But as to protection from 100-year floods, the people disagree, scientists disagree about what's necessary, and I really take seriously the environmental approach that a lot of scientists are saying now.
People are more important than things.
Of course people are more important than things.
For the first person to die, people are more important than the environment. I believe in protecting nature, but the humans are more important.
Of course people are more important than the environment, but humans are part of the environment. We are animals. Here's the thing I want to say to you all though. If I was told, I'm new to this, but I was told the reason we can't have the 100-year flood is because it will require too many people who own property that goes into the creek that that can't be private, that it could be private property, but it needs to be protected riparian land. That actually that natural solutions protect against floods. Concrete doesn't. By 2100, actually they say now by 2075, the flood zone is going to increase by 50%. By 50%. We can't keep concreting our way out of this. Yeah, but she has a question for me. I know, but yeah.
So final question.
This is a
comment directly addressed to Director Eisenberg. You got elected to represent us on the Santa Clara County Water District. You are taking over this position when these projects are ready to go. It is your job to make them happen and to bring forward all the resources of Santa Clara County, Valley Water, financial, legal, labor, political, and get these projects done. And it's on you, Director Eisenberg, to get them done.
I agree.
Thank you.
I agree. I mean, yeah. I'm not pulling anything
Yeah,
down.
on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap. We're standing between you and dinner. Thank you so much. This is not a limited time offer for questions and comments. I'm easy to find. Please send me your photographs, your questions and comments.
I'm so sorry.